So where do you need to be brave? That song, that's a principle. God makes us brave. It's a truth. But a truth then has a different application possibly for every different person. So one truth, many applications. So when we talk about finance, you may need to be brave to face your financial situation. Ignoring it is not facing it. Pretending it will be different tomorrow or next year is not facing it. Facing it, your finances, your relationship, your work, whatever problem you have, is finding out what is the reality. What is really happening? What is the real problem? That's the hard part. The easy part of what we're doing is to hear some good information, to be inspired, to think, wow, that's great. Maybe I'll do something. The hard part is to say, where am I? What do I need to do next? And then do it. That's the hard part. What is the real problem? In communication, there's often conflict, misunderstanding, even about the very simplest things. And so the hard part of communication is not to talk. It's not even to listen, as hard as that is. It's to find out what's the obstacle in the communication. The hard part with finances is saying, what is the real issue? What keeps me from facing this next obstacle? And so today we're not really concluding, we're closing the series of four that we've had on the question, never enough, finding the keys to financial contentment. And this is the name of a book, that's the title of a book by Ron Blue. And you can look up ronblueinstitute.org for organization. Ron Blue Institute, he has all types of little videos and help and information. You can go there and find out more. We are working on the Spanish part. And so if you don't speak any English and you don't really read, you don't have to speak it, but if you don't read any English or understand, then the website won't help you very much. And you need to take pictures of these when they're coming, so the slides. And I want to say, I didn't say this earlier in the month, but Gianfranco has done an amazing job in creating the PowerPoints. And so I just want to make sure you don't think that I did that, because I really can't. And that's a lot of work and a great contribution. And so thank you for that, Jeff, for your work. So we're going to go through this. Yeah. People doing things that you don't even know they're doing, and making this better for us all. So we're going to review a couple of the points, and I want to recommend two things as you watch this, particularly if you've been here for the last several weeks. One, that you look at this and make a visual mental picture in your mind, and the part that most inspires you, go teach it to somebody. Explain it. Say, today I learned one perspective. What is it? I learned the 4 purposes of money. What are they? There's only 5 basic principles. I really promise you that you will not find in your life a more simple, basic explanation of how to follow step by step the path to just have basic financial peace and contentment. From a Christian perspective, you're not going to find, there's not another book out there that's going to answer. There's different details. There's different kinds of questions, but as far as basic truth that has a different application, one truth, many applications. Everyone's job is different, but or everyone's life is a little bit different. But the application of these, you have to make the application. But these principles are really, really good, and that's why we're teaching them. So let's go ahead. Let's go to the next slide. We started off talking about the heart. The heart. One perspective. And we said the heart, we want to talk about stewardship, contentment, faith, wisdom. We shared some different Bible verses, some scripture that could back this up. And it's not like there's one Bible verse. These are like the major themes of Bible study if you go in. And for our heart, there's really only one perspective that should guide our thinking about money. And it is this. Who can tell me? God owns it all. God owns it all. And so he said Psalm 24:1. The most famous psalm in the Bible is not Psalm 24. It's actually Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. And so in the song we just sang, You Make Me Brave. I think it was in the You Make Me Brave. Maybe it was the one before that. It said, you leave the 99 and go looking for the one. And so we thought, well, that's kind of an interesting thing. It means, you go looking for me when I'm the one that's lost. But it's actually straight a picture of a story from the Bible that Jesus told. The kind of good shepherd that he is. There could be 99 sheep and only one is lost, instead of saying, well, there's always a sheep that gets lost. It's just the cost of having sheep. You lose one. He said, no, God's love, and that's what the song was saying, God's love is like, he says, 99. Oh, one didn't make it. Let's go find him. And he leaves the 99 that are here, they're doing okay, and he goes and looks for the one. So those are pictures of the Bible, and then how do we apply that? So these same concepts are all the way through: stewardship, contentment, faith, wisdom. And it all flows out of the perspective that ultimately God owns it all. Ron Blue said all the stuff that you want and all the stuff that you have and all the stuff that you think will make you happy, the better phone or the nicer shirt or the newer shoes or the trip to wherever, all of the stuff is just, he calls it pre-trash. How are you going to translate that one, Florencia? I didn't warn you. But it's just pre-trash. One of the days, it's going in the dumpster. And so, how do you find peace and contentment? Stuff will not give us contentment. Trips will not give us contentment. These principles, it doesn't matter if you have a lot of money, or very little bit of money. No matter what your financial situation is, all of these principles we'll talk about will work for you. Because this one is about your heart perspective, your heart attitude, your main understanding of how the whole creation works. God ultimately owns it all. I am a steward. And so that was the first perspective we talked about. I think the message is online, and so you can go back and hear it. Florencia won't be there to translate, but it's there online. What's the next one, Andres? So we talked about 5 principles. And here was Nate was talking that Sunday and sharing 5 basic principles. And the one at the middle of it all, the one at the heart of it all, if you can't remember any other principles, you start with this one. You have to spend less than you earn. And somebody came up and they said, well, I don't even earn anything. So, yeah, well, that's a challenge. So what money are you living on? And so there's some complexities. But the basic principle is of the money that you have to live on, you have to spend less than what's coming in. Otherwise, you're getting into some debt, and the debt, maybe it's necessary. But if you can't learn the principle and apply it to live with less than's coming in, you could win the lottery. And you know what? That principle, that lack of discipline, the inability to spend within that amount of money will ruin you. Because somebody give you $1 million and you'll spend $1.5 million. You know what? It's just like that. You have 1,000 pesos, and so you go out and you spend 1,200. And you win $1 million, and you think, if I win $1 million, yeah, I'd have so much money, I'd put it in the bank, I'd pay people's bills, I'd be generous. No, you win $1 million. If you're the person that has 1,000 and you spend 1,200, then when you win $1 million, you're going to go out and spend 1.2 million, and your debts will be that much bigger. The problems, and so it doesn't matter. It's the principle. Spend less than you spend less than you earn. If you can't do that, nothing else will work. Everything else, forget it. Just stop on that point and say, okay, this is what I have to do. And so somebody wisely came to me and they said, If that's the first point, then your first job is to make a budget. If you've never made a budget, or if you've made a budget a long time ago, a budget means how much money do I have to work with? Where do I get paid? What is all the money, resources that I have? And what are all the bills and the debts and the obligations that I have? And you start to write it down. And if you really want some help with that, and you say, look, I'd like somebody to help me, come and talk to me. And we have some people here who are really good at sitting down, and we can make an appointment, and someone can help you create a very simple budget to understand where you are. A budget is a powerful tool because then it helps you to see. Oh, so I could cancel the DirecTV. Now, you don't want to, but you could, and it would save you money. Instead of I'm paying for the bus fares, and my daughter comes and says, Dad, quit paying for the bus and go down to Abitab and get the card, and it's cheaper. All the time it's cheaper. And I was like, well, it's a bus fare. Yeah, but you add it up because you have a budget, and you realize you can save money. And so people can help you, and you spend less than you earn. So I'm not going to spend that long on all of that, but that's the key point, because up at the top it says give generously. And in Spanish it says da generosamente or dar alegremente. It's amazing. The Bible says God loves the happy giver, the cheerful giver, el dador alegre. Wouldn't it be great? You said God loves us. What if you could give generously? And the reason most people would like to give generously, say, I'd like to be able to help Nacho. Just finish that trip and do that. I just don't have any money. Right now, I just don't have anything. If you'd like to get to the place where you can be the person that gives generously, maybe you don't have $1 million to give, but you could give 100 pesos and say, I want to help that. I want to help that person and do something. It's because you have to go back and do these other steps. Avoid unnecessary debt. And if you haven't, eliminate it. Plan for financial margin. You're always going to have a crisis. Isn't that true? Those of you who are older, those of you who lived across all the decades, there's always something waiting to happen. The flat tire, the visit to the doctor, the problem that comes along, or you're cooking and all of a sudden like you needed milk and there's no milk. And it's like, who has some coins? And you look around. And so plan for some margin. You're going to need some money for stuff that you haven't thought about. And so how do you save that? You set long-term goals. The power of a goal, to look down the road and say, you know what? There's no way I can pay the debt this month, but maybe if I work at it 5 years from now, and you set the goal and you say, how am I going to do that? It's amazing when you have a picture in your mind of what the future could look like, how that will impact your life and help you get there. You have to be able to see it to be able to realize it. And to see it, you have to have a concept. You have to conceptualize it to be able to visualize it, to be able to realize it. And that's a truth no matter what kind of work or thing you're doing. You look at it and you say, wow, wouldn't it be amazing to be able to give? That's a great concept. But can you see yourself actually giving money to help somebody? How do you get there? How do you do it? And so you set some goals and you figure that out. So those are the 5 principles. Go ahead, Andres. And then we said there's 4 purposes. And Tony gave a really excellent presentation, all very thorough, organized, shared so much information last week. I had read the book several times and worked on the talks, and I was still learning stuff from Tony's presentation I hadn't really processed. You can go over and over it again. And the book is like $7 on Kindle. You can just go on to Amazon and buy it. But there's only 4 purposes. What a simple way to break down, even create your budget. I met with the new treasurer. We've had a new treasurer in the church for like 2 weeks. So he's like trying to figure it all out. So what in the world? And it's Pedro Baez right here. And so we're meeting, and Pedro is listening to these talks, and he's like, wow, this looks like the church. Like, put the budget in here. If you've never made a budget, or even if you have, put your numbers into this pie. A circle in English, we would call it the pie. So live, give, owe, and grow. That's the only things you can ever do with your money. There are no other purposes. You can think about it. You can create stuff. You live, you give, you owe, and you grow. And we divided owe into 2 parts. Ron Blue did. One is you can owe taxes and you can owe debts. And Tony gave a great explanation. Really, of all of those, only 2 are productive uses of money, like to help you produce more. Which ones are they? It's give and grow. Give and grow are the only 2 things that are going to make the money be worth more later. You're giving to help somebody, to help them to grow. Send Nacho on an opportunity to get a leadership training and develop, and it's good for the group theirs. Everybody wins. And grow is like, how do you save money? How do you invest money? How do you take those steps? So giving and growing, but you know what? Often the way that we live and the way we structure our budget, we put live first. And we put owe second because you have to, you're like trapped. And so owe comes second, and give and grow are like at the end. And then we think about savings if we have some extra, and so grow comes next and give comes last. And weren't we just talking, and I'm not suggesting it's for you, but I would guess that most people, if they sat down and thought, what would I like to do if I could? Somewhere down the future is the idea, I wish I had enough money that I could help my mom or somebody. There's somebody you wish you could help. And that's give. But we set our budget so it's the opposite, and give comes last. And live comes first. And so it's the discipline to be able to say, every decision I make with my money affects all the other parts. And Ron Blue says, we make a budget, or we think like, well, today I'll buy this. I don't really need it, but it's just like today I have the money right now, so I'll buy it, and then I'll move forward with my life. The thing is, because you overspent here, something that wasn't even in your budget, now you don't have that money when something else comes along. And so every decision you make, if you live big, then all the other pieces are going to be smaller. And if your live is big, probably your owe is big. And so how do you do that? How do you make the different things, pie pieces, grow? And you say, you know what, really, ideally, I'd like to owe less and give more, or I need to save more. And how do you move the lines? Does that make sense? Following with me? Yeah, some of you are like, yeah, John, we've been over this all month, so keep moving. God owns it all, and there's only 4 purposes for your money: live, give, owe, grow. You should be able to talk to somebody about that and explain it, because it's not, the more you think about it, there's so many applications. There's more and more that will come to light. And when you pay taxes, says Ron Blue, and I think it's a great perspective, every time you pay taxes, it's because you're able to consume something. You have income, you have something, and so actually taxes is like where we can get angry, and there could be reasons to be angry or frustrated or all of that, but you only pay taxes when you have something. So you can be grateful for the something you have, and it helps us to face these kinds of things. But so we grow when we think about that. Okay, go on. How do you increase the margin? The margin is so that you could move your pie. So the debt part is smaller. Maybe the live part needs to be smaller so you could grow and give, being the best things. Because grow and give are productive. Owe is obligatory. And live is just, you're deciding whether you want to spend a lot of money or a little money on your today. So how do you increase the margin? That's what we're going to focus on for the next few minutes. And so we've made a little ladder here, and it's going up, and it says sequential investing. And the idea is, how do you move the person at the bottom? And in Spanish, we were teaching this the other day, and we said you go from superado to superávit, or super. Superado is like when you're almost drowning. So the one all the way at the bottom is struggling. And there's the stage of life when you're struggling with your finances, and that means you just can't even get to the end of the month. And maybe probably almost everyone has experienced that at some time in their life. And hopefully maybe you never did, and hopefully you never will, because it's not a good place to be. But people are struggling, and it's like, you know what, there is just simply not enough money coming in to get to the end of the month, or the semester, or the year, however you break down your money. And so, struggling. Oh yeah, and so it says, how do you get from struggling? You know what, just go back one step. I'll just name them all because maybe not everyone can see it. Struggling, then the next step is surviving. And you want to get from surviving, how do you get to stable? And from stable to secure. And from secure to surplus. And how do you move that up? And often the person that's struggling or surviving, we're dreaming and we read a book that's super inspirational and it's talking about surplus. But you don't just automatically go from struggling to surplus. Nobody does. That's the person that wins the lottery and you're like, oh, lucky person. You know, now they are fixed for life. Or they signed a pro contract. And yet if you go back and study, you realize most of those people lost the money because the reason they're struggling, or one of the reasons, there can be other reasons, often the struggling is because they're still figuring out, how do I spend less than comes in? How do I limit myself so I can increase the margin to get to the next level? And you have to go step by step. So I don't want anybody to have to struggle and survive and do these things. It's just like that's the way it works. And so let's go on. Okay, struggling. How do you get from being a struggler to a survivor? So if you're the struggling person, chances are probably the most likely thing is you have some debts. And that's one of the reasons the money's not enough, because every time some money comes in, every time you get paid, you know, I don't know if it's the UTE and the OLSE and the gas, and those things are coming in, but you also, maybe you have some debts because you bought something on quotas and you borrowed money from your parents or from a friend. And so there are these debts, and often they have interest. And often that interest, it comes on a credit card. So one of the things we talk about, if you have a credit card and you don't pay it off every month before it's due, then that credit card is your worst enemy. You need to cut it up and throw it away. If you can't pay, a credit card is a great tool because it allows you to not carry cash and to make a secure transaction and then to go home and pay it with cash. But if you get behind on a credit card, and probably some of us have, it's like you can't get back out. You can't get out from under it because the bank has set it up so that once you start paying that interest, you're just going to be paying it for a really long time. And that's when you start praying for the lottery or something and to get to the surplus. And really you just need to cut up your credit card and say no more credit cards. Can't do that. And so a credit card is a good tool, but it's the high interest debt and the short-term debts are killing you, or me. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. I've done it. I've been there. I've done that. Say, would you I want to have this hamburger today, but I don't want the dollar menu. You know, I want the big burger, but I don't have enough money. So can you just give me 200 pesos? And then go on and just sort of forget about it. Well, okay, well, he had it, so I won't pay him back. But then you start having these little debts, and you add up, and you really owe people money. And the next time you go for a hamburger, your friend's like, hey, remember last time I paid, so you pay. It's like, so these things add up. Get out of the debt. When you get out of the debt, then you go to surviving. Surviving means that you are now able to make it. You're not doing great, but at least you're making the ends meet, how we say in the States. Your ends meet. It means you get to the end of the month and you settled the bills and yeah, okay. How do you get from surviving to stable is you create an emergency fund. It's that little bit of margin. It's like you just take, even if it's a few pesos, and you're able to start setting some money aside. There's the old concept that's really a very good concept about putting your money in envelopes, because you're not a great accountant and you don't really understand Excel, and some people are super using Excel, and for most people it's just really, it's not really that helpful. You actually need to put the money in an envelope or in a place and say, this money is for emergencies. And you can't access it. Because if you're like me and the money's in your pocket and the emergency's right now, whatever I'm doing. So I was like, I'm going to do that. And I give my money to Lisa. That's one of the ways. Lisa manages our money because I already know that she has a lot more discipline, and she says, no, I forget that this money already has a purpose, that I need it in 2 weeks or 6 months or whenever. So Lisa keeps track of that. But use some envelopes. Divide up your money. Put it in the envelope, say this one is the food and this one is the other. That's how we got control of our finances. And we separate out, and then you go for the food envelope, grocery shopping, and you have to learn, don't go grocery shopping when you're hungry because you're going to spend more money. And don't go grocery shopping when you have money that's to pay the bills. Put the bill money at home, and when you go to the grocery store, just take what you need. Don't take your credit card. You make little tricks that are going to help you if you need that, because you need an emergency fund to get to stable. Otherwise, you're surviving. Follow the logic. You're surviving. You're making it every month, and all of a sudden you get sick. You have to go to the doctor. You miss a couple days of work. You have a flat tire, and there wasn't money because you were just barely making it. And we're making these illustrations like as if we didn't have any money, but it could be a big amount of money. You could be running a business. You could have a big budget. And so the numbers could be bigger or they could be smaller. But when you don't have it to pay, then you have to borrow it. You have to find a way. And so the emergency fund is just that. It's for emergencies. And when you can have an emergency fund, then you're in a place that's called stable. You have money to pay your bills, and you even have a little bit of extra. You have that emergency fund. And how much is a good emergency fund, we said? Anybody remember? Lots of you remember. Nobody wants to say. But maybe 3 to 6 months worth of your monthly budget. If your budget's big, then you have a big emergency fund. If your budget is small, whatever you have for the month, that means put an emergency fund, and it's just a tool that you can imagine. Put 1, 2, so I need 10,000 pesos in the month. So my emergency fund should be 30,000 pesos or 50,000 pesos that I don't use. I don't touch. I don't say, oh, I got 50,000 pesos. I'll just buy some extra groceries this week. Well, no, that's your emergency fund, because if something bad happens, you need that money. And it allows you to stay stable. And then you're saving for important purchases, because if an emergency comes, there's money in that envelope. And you can start saying, okay, you know what? We really need to, change the car. We really need to get dental work done. We really need to, whatever you have a bigger goal down the road, you really need a vacation because you didn't take a vacation in a few years, and you think that's important. We really need to go see grandma. You need to make a trip. Whatever it is, you choose the priority. I'm not saying what's the priority. But your important purchase, now you have stability. You've eliminated your big debts. You have your emergency fund if something bad happens and some problem comes up or some opportunity. An emergency is not just for a bad thing. A really great opportunity comes and you're like, wow, Nacho could go to Chile for leadership training and I want to help him. And so I have some money, and then it's your decision. Nobody's like looking down on what's the emergency fund. It's your money to use, but it's having the discipline to know if I take money out of this fund, then my next step goes to put the money back. Okay, so secure. You're saving, you're diversifying for long-term goals and looking ahead. And then surplus is that person that now has enough money, they're actually realizing long-term goals. They're making the visit to grandma, they're helping pay for maybe their grandkids' schooling or their, whatever kinds of things that they had. So let's go ahead. Go ahead to the next one. Completing your long-term goals. So there's about 6 common long-term goals. I'll just mention these to give you an idea. So you're saying, okay, grow. What would be like long-term goals? Ron Blue says, here's a number of the kinds of goals that people have that they set in life that really helps you empower your life to say, I'd like to get there. One is to be debt-free. I just like to not have any debts. My mom said that. She got to be like 70 years old, and my dad had like a major accident when he was 60. And because of the insurance, my dad about died. He was in a coma for a long time. He was in rehab for almost 2 years. He lost his job, everything. But because of some insurance that they had, they actually paid off the house. My mom said like years later, when everything finally settled out, she still had my dad, and they were out of debt. And she says, now after like 50 years, never going back to debt. I won't spend money. If I had to just sit in my living room and drink coffee, but I'm not borrowing money for anything ever again. So that's a goal, debt-free. Another is a lifestyle desire, some kind of way you want to live, a car you want to have, a place you want to go. It's your lifestyle desire, studies you want to attend. Another major long-term goal is family provision. You like to imagine. Lots of people say, man, I'm going to make some money because I'm going to buy my mom something. And so maybe it's for your mom, or maybe it's for your grandkids, but family provision. Financial independence is another one. And financial independence means when you have the freedom to decide if you want to take the job or not. You know, people say, I hate my job. Well, quit. No, I can't because I need the paycheck. So financial independence is when you're at a place where you can like choose for yourself because you have enough security and stability. Donate. People say, you know, I'd love to be able to help an individual, an organization, a church, a program. And a sixth one is to begin a business. We live in a culture where people are struggling, so they try to start a business. That's part of the culture, and that's a tough one. Because if you don't have the principles in place, if your personal life can't make it, your business probably won't either. That's the bad news. So putting these things into practice helps you realize, I could look down the road and see how I might begin a business. So I probably need to move on because I'm looking at the clock. Sorry, guys. Go ahead, Andres. So I want to challenge you on this. Faith goals. Faith goals is something, all of those things, I guess I wanted to ask you, and I will, but when you look at those, that little ladder climbing up, the question is, where are you? Struggling, surviving, stable, secure, and figuring out where you are and what's the next step. But faith goals is something that probably you may not have thought about, but this works from any step of the ladder. It's not even about my greatest wish down the road, but a faith goal is this. And here's a challenge for you this week. Go home and take some time. Today when we prayed, I just said, just be quiet for a few minutes. So I don't know if you liked that or you didn't like that, but go home, and that's like spending time with God. Sit still, take some deep breaths, get comfortable. I'm just going to sit here, and all the things that come into your mind, just wait till they kind of go away. Just kind of, okay, well, maybe write it down if you need to. But spend some time and think about, where am I financially? Where am I on the ladder? And where do I want to be? Like to get to the next step. What might I need to do? What would be a goal or two goals that would help me pay debt, do whatever, you know. And you spend that time and then write down and record your impressions. If you have never done that before, you probably need to do it a few times. Because first of all, you just have your own ideas, all the stuff you already know. That's what's in our head. You know, there's a rule for those of you who have my personality. You have lots of ideas. Your first impulse, your first idea is probably not a good one. The problem that you think is the problem is generally not the problem. That's another rule from counseling, you guys know. So the first things you think of, those aren't the good ideas. You have to dig down. You have to wait. Record your impressions. Then create a goal that's measurable and actionable. I owe this much money. I want to get travel cheaper. I'm spending this much on transportation every month. Because I kept the bus things, I added it up. And my daughter said, Dad, why don't you get a card? It's like, oh, so that's measurable. How much do I do a card? How do I do that? Where do I go to get it? And I go do it. And all of a sudden, I'm saving money on my transportation. And you do it, act. Ephesians 3:20. Ephesians 3:20. Who has that in their Bible? I didn't bring my Bible up here. Diego, man, it's amazing. Ephesians 3:20. Now to him, God, who is able to do immeasurably more. Immeasurably, you can't even measure what God can do, more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us. When we're trusting God and we're saying, Lord, help me to have a faith goal, because this isn't what John thinks. It's not what my kids think. It's not what my parents think. It's me being honest and saying, what is my situation? And God, what would be a good step for me to take? Help me to understand. Because he doesn't always have the same logic that we do. And he'll show you something, and you'll have an impression, and you'll look at it and sit with it and maybe do it for a week. And then next week. And you say, you know what? This is like sticking in my mind. I think this is what I need to do. And make a goal and do it. And God can do immeasurably more than all we can ask or imagine. We're going to finish here, but I just want to go back and show the two slides. Again, what's the next one? The sequential investing. Where are you? Where are you? What is your reality? Struggling, surviving. We'd all like to say we're better than we are. We like to keep up with the neighbor. The reality, the neighbor's not as good as he looks or she looks. And the other reality is it doesn't really matter what the neighbor is, what they have or don't have. What matters is you, your heart, your perspective, your needs, your future. Where are you? And then the last one is another repeat, the faith goals. So let me pray as we close this morning. I'm going to pray and then close the service with a benediction and invite Cynthia comes, and then we'll have change the lights and just have a moment of reflection, and the service will be closed. Heavenly Father, everybody has financial struggles, and some of us have had great successes. Some of us have had little successes, but all of us have challenges. We'd always like to grow. So this is information, and yet it comes right out of the wisdom of the ages. These principles can work for every person here. And so I pray and ask you that in your mercy, you would show each person who's willing to take some time and humbly say, Lord, help me to take the next step to understand where I am, how I got here, and how to take the next step. Lord, I pray that you in your mercy would give us your wisdom. Scriptures say that you give generously to all without finding fault when we ask you for wisdom. So, Lord, give us wisdom. Give us the humility to ask and the ears to hear, the openness to receive from you, so that we can experience new peace and joy and contentment as we follow this path towards wisely managing the resources that have been entrusted to us.